Hi everyone, Leah here at EurekaCrystalBeads.com with another fun beading video for you. Before I get started, take a look at our channel, and if you like what you see, hit that subscribe button and notification bell, and you'll always know when we're posting new content. Today's project is going to be a slight redesign of our Mardi Gras Rose Monte crystal bracelet. And what's going to make it a little different is that we're going to use some Rose Montes that are just a little bit smaller. So let me get started by showing you exactly what we're going to be using for this project. Okay, to start down here, these are the findings that we're going to be using. So we're going to have a slide tube clasp that has for 2 strands. And we're going to need a crimp bead and a crimp cover for each of those little loops there. So that means 4 crimps and 4 crimp covers. The crimps are going to be 2 by 2 millimeters in size, and the crimp covers are going to be 4 millimeter. Next, I have some seed beads. These are size 11 seed beads. These happen to be Toho. Any size 11 seed bead would work just fine. Next, I have 4 millimeter Swarovski crystal bicones. These are in Scarlet AB. And then my last tray, I have some 6 millimeter Swarovski crystal bicones in light cyan, and I have some Preciosa crystal Montes, Rose Montes, in light cyan, and they are set into a silver-plated setting. Now, if you're not sure what a Rose Monte is, let me show you. What we have is a little flat-backed crystal, and it's set into a little metal setting, and you can see the 4 prongs that are holding it there. And when you look and you turn it around on the back, it has a little X-shaped channel way in the setting on the back that you can feed wires or threads through. So this allows for a lot of fun patterns and designs with these Rose Montes. And another neat thing about them is that because they're set into a metal setting, you can see the difference between crystal beads and the Rose Montes. You get a neat different kind of sparkle because the light goes through that crystal and bounces right back off the back of that setting. So both are beautiful, but they give you a little bit of a different look. For tools, we're going to be using our flex wire cutters to cut our soft flex beading wire, and we're going to use a standard size crimping tool. And for our soft flex, we are going to be using the fine diameter, which is the 014 of soft flex beading wire. And you could use either the soft flex beading wire, or you could use the fine diameter soft touch by soft flex. Either one is fine. And what we'll do is we'll link you below to everything that I used here, but also keep in mind that if you love this bracelet but want different colors, we have all of these beads in an array of colors on EurekaCrystalBeads.com, so you could have a lot of fun with all of the different color combinations. And you could have contrasting colors, or you could go with a more monochromatic look like I have here, where I'm using different tones of red. All right, let's get started. To start, you're going to want to dump out a little bit of each of the beads that we'll be using. And that's because to work up this design, you're going to be using all of them at once. So I have my seed beads, my 4 millimeter bicones, my 6 millimeter bicones, and my SS20 sized Rose Montes. We're also going to need our clasp and 2 of our crimp beads. We can put the crimp covers on at the end. I oftentimes find that's easier. As far as how many beads and how much wire, so that's going to be determined by how long you need your bracelet to be. And what we'll be able to do is work up about 1 inch of the bracelet, and then based on how many beads you used in that inch, it'll be easy to determine how many you will need for the total inches of the bracelet that you have to make. As far as our soft flex beading wire here, what I did was I cut 2 pieces each that are about 2.5 feet, and that's what we'll need to get started. And that should really take care of most bracelet sizes that you need. Okay, let's start by picking up one of our 2 by 2 millimeter crimp beads, and we're gonna slide our wire through the loop of the clasp, and we're gonna feed it back through our crimp bead. Now, if you've never crimped before, we have other videos on the Eureka Crystal Beads channel that will go over the process in a bit more detail. And so that would definitely be recommended if you haven't done it before. So I'm going to push that crimp right up to the loop of that clasp. I do want to leave a little bit of wiggle room there. And now I'll go to my crimper tool, and I will get it into the first little station. I'll give it a crimp, Put it up on its side like a letter C, because you can see we have kind of a kidney bean shape now. We'll put it up on its side like a letter C, and we will now fold it in half in the front chamber. Just like that. And if done nice and neatly, you can see that there's now a little seam running down that crimp bead. Now this little tail will have to get trimmed off just a little bit, but not right down to the crimp bead. We are going to leave a little tiny bit there that we're going to feed the first bead right over. So you can go to your flex wire cutter and snip off a little bit that's there. Just like that. This is what you will end up doing for this other side as well. These other two loops will be crimped too when the bracelet is completed. So for now, I'm going to get this other wire crimped onto our loop, and then we'll be able to start weaving our bracelet. Okay, so now that we have both of our pieces of soft flex crimped to our clasp, we're ready to get started weaving our bracelet. So we're going to develop what our repeating pattern is, and then it's pretty easy to keep going. So we're going to start with a 4mm bicone, one onto each side of our wire. Now, I prefer to hold one wire in each hand, and I pick up the beads as I need them. You may find it's easier to use just one hand and keep switching the wire into that hand as you need to. So once we put on the bicone, we're going to pick up a seed bead onto both sides. And now we're going to crisscross through one of our 6mm bicones. And that means that one wire comes in from one side and the other wire comes in from the other side. Just like this. Now we're going to pull this down. Try not to make a mess of all of your other beads. Make sure before you pull it down tight that your bicones are staying over that little tail that was right down at your crimp bead. Otherwise, if you pull everything too tight, it's going to be too difficult to get them to feed back down over them. Okay, and that's what we're going to do, just like this. Now we're going to mirror what we just picked up. So we had picked up bicone seed bead. Now we're going to pick up seed bead bicone, and we're going to do that on both strands. Whatever we do on one strand, we're going to do on the other strand. Okay, now comes our Rose Monte. So the only thing you have to remember when you're adding on your Rose Montees is that you keep them all facing the same direction. So that's they're all face up or all face down. This way you'll be able to put on your bracelet and they're all facing the same way. I actually find it easiest to create my bracelet keeping them bottom side up. That way I can see where I have to put my wires. So now I'm going to have one wire come in from one side of the Monte and the other wire come in from the other side. Just make sure it pops out the right side. You want them to crisscross right through, just like that. You're going to bring this all the way down. And that's what we get from the back side, but the top of the bracelet will look like this. And that will give you just that extra beautiful bit of glitter and really adds a little bit more dimension to your bracelet. So now we're going to do another mirror image. So we had picked up seed bead bicone. Now we're going to pick up bicone seed bead. And as you can see, if you let it go, it starts to loosen up. That's totally fine. Once you get beyond each step, the previous step will then stay tightened. So don't worry about that. And I love using a range of tones in the same color. I think monochromatic can be beautiful, and it really gives such a lovely, lovely look. Okay, so now we're back to crisscrossing through another 6mm bicone. And once I crisscross through the 6mm bicone, this will all stay a little bit tighter. Okay. So now let's pull this down. See, now everything stays just a little bit tighter. That's what we have so far. So now I'm going to go ahead and simply repeat this pattern for the length of the bracelet that I need. Now, once I get to about one more station, so adding in the next Monty, that's going to show me really what I need for an inch. And then from there, you're going to be able to figure out how many beads you need for every inch of a bracelet that you need to make. Okay, as you can see, I have the bracelet worked up. I have just the last few beads on my wires here. So we're ending with seed bead bicone because that is what we started with. And as you can see, you have this beautiful extra glitter from those crystal Rose Montees that adds such an extra level of dimension. So when you're doing a design that's going to be monochromatic, so in this case we have red and pretty much only red, the trick to making that really beautiful and really successful is by changing up what kinds of reds and also what kinds of textures, finishes, and items. So we have all one color, but we have seed beads, different colors of bicones, a dark red and a light red. They're different sizes. We have our Rose Monte, which has that extra beautiful flash to it. So that's why something monochromatic can work really beautifully is simply by changing up textures and sizes so it's not all the same item. This design would be beautiful to go with that little red dress for a night out on the town or for whatever color you're looking to make. Or it would also be fantastic as a bridesmaid's accessory to go with a bridesmaid's dress. So for those of you who do wedding jewelry, this is a great design to offer to your prospective brides for their bridesmaids, or even in all beautiful whites and clear crystals for the bride herself. You can certainly do this with contrasting colors. So a great way to do contrasting colors would be to have the Rose Monte be the contrast, or perhaps the 6mm bicone to be the contrast. Or even you could have fun with changing the seed bead to a brighter metallic seed bead like a silver or a gold. So those are some different design options for you to consider. So once we get to the end, oh, and I also want to point out, this is about an inch worth of the bracelet right here. So for about an inch, every inch that you need of your total finished bracelet, you'll need about 2 Rose Montes, 2 6mm bicones, and 8 4mm crystals. So if you figure that math out, that for whatever times that by whatever length you're looking to make, that's what will give you the amount of beads that you will need for this. So to get this finished up, we're simply going to trim our wires just a little bit shorter so it's easier to crimp. And what's nice is that I started with wires that were more than long enough to make the bracelet, but that way, when I trim them off at the end, they're still of a usable length for another project, which I think is a great little tip, because if you cut it real close and you end up with a bit of wire that's left, it's really just wasteful. It's going to go in the trash. But if you make your wire plenty long enough to not only ensure that you will have enough wire to complete your project, but it will also ensure that what you have cut off at the end is long enough to use for another project. So that's a little tip for you. Okay, so we're going to add a crimp bead onto both wires. And then we'll use one wire first, and we're going to want to crimp it to the loop on the other side of the clasp. So let's make sure our bracelet's facing the right way, actually. You can see that's what it looks like from behind. So you can see how all those X-shaped channels were utilized. Feed it through the loop of our clasp, back through our crimp bead, and then also feed it back through that bicone crystal at the end. Some of your beads those beads might pop off, so maybe we'll just leave them to the side for now. And then as you can see, as we pull towards the bracelet, the entire thing tightens up nicely for us. Okay, now we're going to use our crimper tool, and we're going to squish our crimp bead in the same manner that we did at the beginning of the bracelet. Forgive me because I'm having to hold this in a way so you guys can see it, so it makes it a little tougher for me to see it. There we go. Now we're going to do the same thing on the other side. So I'll get those beads right back on there that fell off. Now we feed up through the other loop, back down through the crimp bead and through the bicone. Get in there. There we go. Now we can pull this side nice and tight, and you can see how the whole thing tightens up beautifully, just like that. And again, what I want to do is just loosen my crimp back down towards that last bead just a little bit, just so that way that little loop of wire isn't too tight. Okay, get in there with our crimper tool. And again, if you're new to crimping, take a look at our YouTube channel because we have some other videos that will go over crimping in much more detail for you. Okay, so now we can go ahead and trim off the wires. And this is really most easily done with a flex wire cutter because it allows you to get so nice and close. Just like that. And then now it's just time for our crimp covers. So I'll show you how one of those works. If you've never used a crimp cover before, it looks like a little round bead that has a little slit down one side and it's been peeled open just a little bit. That is so you can feed it right over your crimp bead, just like that. And then when you close it, it's going to camouflage that crimp bead, because I think we've all been in that situation where our crimp looks a little mangled, but we know it's holding really well. Well, this is a great way that you can camouflage that. And even then, it's just still really good to use because it's one less component that you're going to have to see, and instead you'll see a nice, pretty little silver bead. I actually like to use my crimper tool for this, actually. Okay, so once you get it most of the way shut, you can sometimes see that there's still a little seam right. That's when I like flipping it around and putting that seam on the roof of my crimper. There we go. And so now, as you can see, it's going to look like a silver bead, which is a lot more of a cleaner look. So let me go ahead and get those last 3 crimp covers on, and I'll show you the final product in just a minute. So as you can see, we have our finished bracelet, and you can see how beautifully that sparkles. Again, I hope that you love this project. It's a great one for a beginner or even really any skill level that just wants to do something that's just a little bit above a basic beginner project, because you're getting to utilize some soft flex for a really quick, easy weaving technique. And again, I love these slide clasps. If you've never used one before, they're great because they're very easy to take on and off yourself, as you can see here. So that's what we got, that beautiful glimmer from those crystal Rose Montees. Take a look over at EurekaCrystalBeads.com. We'll link you below to everything I used, but we have all of these in a wonderful range of colors. All right, guys, thanks for watching. See you next time.